We're here one more day. Baruch Hashem. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה בדברו. Yeah. There is a glass over there and some tea bags. And Jordan, just grab a book for Binyamin, please, from behind you. Laws of Pesach. It's right there. Exactly. Bring a few. Yeah, thanks. Perfect. We started already. We jumped right into the Haggadah. I wanted to make sure we got right into things. But let's backtrack a little bit and give you the introduction.
So you're up to know that.
So you're asking about the tzitzit. So tzitzit, there is a tradition that we don't cut them with metal.
Yeah. So
how do you make them shorter if they're too long? Was the question. So first of all, you have to know what's the minimum length. So don't cut them shorter than that.
Okay.
But obviously you're talking about a child's tzitzit, so there's more room to be flexible. But the bottom line is that if you're not going to cut it, you can cut it with scissors. Nothing will happen. It doesn't make the tzitzit invalid. Okay. It's just there is the custom. So what sometimes people do is you get a children's plastic scissors. You can buy special scissors in a store for arts and crafts. They have scissors made out of plastic to teach children. Also, a little bit low tech, and that is you can use your teeth. You can bite off the edge of your tzitzit, and that way you're not using metal. But you are allowed to shorten them as long as it's not too short. The minimum is 24 centimeters, the sum total from where where it ties onto the cloth till the end should be at least 24 centimeters. Many times people make them longer, but it can get caught in things, and I don't like it for it to be too long because then you could even drag on the floor with a little young child, which is not respectful for the tzitzit. So by all means, you can shorten them. I don't think you have to be go crazy about the metal versus the plastic either. If you find it's very inconvenient, you can just snip them off, especially when it's a child's tzitzit.
Okay.
That's the long answer. Short answer, yes, it's fine. The longer answer is, of course, there's more to be said. Yes?
Actually, I have 3 questions.
3 questions. Welcome back. Only 3, I should just say. We're going to wait for so long.
I was thinking maybe if I had 1, it's not enough. You missed me, so I have 3.
We missed you for sure.
It's a principal question. Why we carry a kippah? Why the kippah is round? Why we have talit? Why need to be a talit? Why we have our tefillin? Why we do this? Why we have 7 times to
Wow.
And there is so many ways to do it. So I ask myself, why we do this? The kippah, we also can take a handkerchief or something to have on our head. So why we do this?
Trying to understand your question a little better. You're asking about the details or about the concept in general? Both?
More about the details.
More about the details, yeah. So...
I don't know if the Talmudim, they know it maybe. I'd like to know.
Listen, we always want to know things, go over them and know them deeper and know them better. But in general, the concept is, the Hasidic masters teach us that man has 3 major functions. And I'm not talking about the digestive system. Machshava, dibur, ma'aseh. Your thoughts, your speech, and your action. So if we want to declare or express our connection to God, our being Jewish, and our commitment to Him, so we try to use all 3. Of course, dibur, we say prayers, and the thoughts should be directed to Him as much as we can. Everything that we do is part of our service of Hashem. And then we also put it into practice. you're asking me about specific practices. As you know, the tzitzit and the tefillin are commandments mentioned in the Torah. With their specifics, we believe that there's an oral tradition that came along together with the written tradition, which gives us more details about what those frontlets between your eyes and what the sign on your arm is supposed to look like. And the tzitzit as well. The Torah says it's a four-cornered garment and you should have fringes, but the number of knots and the number of strings, this is all passed down in the oral law. So we have a tradition about the specifics of this mitzvah. When it comes to the kippah, I think we also know that it's not really a biblical command. It's not even a rabbinic command. Out of the three that you asked about, the kippah is the most recent addition to the Jewish tradition. In modern times, it's become perhaps the most noticeable sign of what it means to be a committed Jew, to be wearing a kippah. But in terms of rules and regulations, it's much less detailed, and it's all, nothing comes from the Torah, nothing comes from the Talmud, and it all comes from Jewish culture of different communities and how they practice this. So in some places they have a square kippah, and some places they have a round kippah, and some places they wear till today. I think some communities use black velvet, and some communities use white knitted, and they're all kosher. They're all fine. There's nothing wrong with either one of them. It's just sort of sub-communities within the committed Jewish. But the wearing a kippah, it's a very ancient symbol of recognizing that there's someone above you. This does appear in the Talmud, but it was never a binding practice that had to be. But nowadays, it is a binding practice that anybody who wants to say a blessing or wants to eat, for sure they should be wearing something on top of their head of any kind. It could be a baseball hat, it could be a fedora hat, whichever kind you like. Even a straw hat is a kosher, and we try to cover our heads. As I said, luckily we live in an age where we have religious freedom, and we can wear a kippah on the streets without being fearful for our lives. We'll be labeled as a Jew and beat up for it, like Jews were in previous eras, and in some places of the world, there's still today. There are Jews who are afraid to wear a kippah for the fear of anti-Semitism. So we're very lucky that we live in Jerusalem, in Israel, and we're able to wear a kippah. The specific details, I think there's very few rules and regulations. It's more a question of community identity. I hope that answer is good enough. Was that one or three questions? That was one question, or as I could see? That was...
For me, the kippah is like in some communities, when you are going to marry, you wear a ring.
Right.
The kippah is my commitment to Hashem, like a marriage.
Nice, very nice, beautiful. Okay, so I guess we'll hear about the other ones a little bit later. We'll get started on the class. Great. Good morning, Eitan. Good to see you. Boker Tov, how are you? All right, good. We're going to play a little catch-up. Actually, this is do you have your Haggadah Shel Pesach? I gave it out to everybody last week. I put together a Haggadah for us, all in English, from start to finish. And we started to go through it last week. It's all on 4 pages, so that's nice to have. A little bit small print. I'm sorry but I wanted to get it all into 4 pages. But now let's do a little bit of background for this Haggadah, where it came from, what's it composed of, and we have right in front of us Pnei Halacha on the laws of Pesach, chapter 16, page 209. Okay, so Jordan, will you take it away for us? Introduction.
Before detailing the laws of the Seder, let us briefly survey the mitzvot we fulfill on the Seder night. 2 elements constitute the foci of the Seder. The first is commemoration of our exodus from Egypt and emancipation from slavery and reflection on the significance of Israel's freedom. The second is to transmit our tradition to the next generation. Both of these are included in the Torah's commandments to tell the story of Exodus on the night of the 15th of Nisan. In order to make this commemoration tangible, the Torah commands us to eat the Korban Pesach, Paschal sacrifice, matzah and maror on this night. The Paschal sacrifice recalls God's miraculous slaying of the Egyptian firstborn while passing over the houses of the Israelites, sparing their firstborns. The matzah recalls the matzot our forefathers ate when they left Egypt for freedom, and the maror recalls the hard labor and bitter enslavement our forefathers experienced at the hands of the Egyptians. Because the temple is now in ruins, we are unable to offer the Paschal sacrifice. We eat the afikomen instead. On the Torah level, the mitzvah to eat maror is contingent on eating the Paschal sacrifice. When the Pesach sacrifice is not offered, there is no mitzvah to eat maror. However, the sages instituted eating maror even after the destruction of the temple. No change has taken place regarding the mitzvah to eat matzah. Thus, even after the destruction of the temple, there is a Torah commandment to eat of all its bulk, seit of matzah. The sages also instituted the integration of 4 cups of wine into the recitation of the Haggadah, which we drink as an expression of joy and freedom. They also instituted that we eat matzah and drink wine while reclining as an administration of freedom.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So if we can summarize, help me out here, guys. Summarize. What are the mitzvot of the Seder night? The mitzvot. We just enumerated a number of mitzvot. So there's 2 that are biblical, on the biblical level. Today, what are they? Number 1 is to eat matzah. Oh, great. Okay. Nope. The biblical level. Second one that's still biblical today is that we have to tell the story. Tell the story. So those are 2 biblical mitzvot which we still have today. Now, there's another biblical mitzvah which we don't have today, and that is to eat the Pesach sacrifice, the Pesach offering.
Talking about Koreh?
I'm talking about in the ancient times, there was meat of a sacrifice that we don't have nowadays. We don't have meat of the sacrifice. Now the Torah says that together with the Pesach offering, you're supposed to also have maror. So we don't have the Pesach offering, so the mitzvah to eat maror, bitter herbs, is not there either. But we're going to get up to the sandwich in a second. But just, you're supposed to have bitter herbs when you eat the Pesach sacrifice. The rabbis came along and said, even though we don't have a Pesach offering, we don't have meat, you still should take maror and eat a bitter herb. So we have, this is going to be rabbinic obligations. Rabbinic obligations. Today, number 4, maror, is a rabbinic obligation. So up till here, those were the biblical obligations. It used to be that maror was also a biblical obligation when there was a Pesach sacrifice. But nowadays, we don't have a Pesach offering, so the maror is the beginning of the rabbinic mitzvot. Of course, we do all the mitzvot, whether they're biblical or rabbinic. We also do customs, but there's another rabbinic mitzvah. Who can tell me what that is?
The wine we bring?
Good. 4 cups of wine. 4 cups of wine is a rabbinic mitzvah. I'm going to add in something that he hasn't mentioned yet, but we're going to see that plus we have to recline. At various times when we eat, when we drink various foods, we're supposed to recline. That's sort of connected to, it's an additional mitzvah, maybe I'll call it number 6, if you will. We have to recline. That's also a rabbinic institution. You haven't done your mitzvah properly if you haven't reclined while drinking your cup of wine or eating the matzah. You have to be reclining. This is a rabbinic addition. It's not enough just to do this mitzvah. So we have some total 6 mitzvot on the Seder night. And then, of course, we also have the third level. Who remembers the third level? Customs. Very good. The customs, we have so many customs of dipping and other things as well. And the special clothes and the everything that we're going to talk about. There's many more customs, but the basic mitzvot are listed here. If we get to the number 6 mitzvot of the Seder night. Questions on that? Comments? Is that clear? Perfect. We tested on it tomorrow. What are the mitzvot of the Seder night? You got all 6?
Yes.
Biblical level. Matzah and telling the story. Pesach offering, which we don't have today. And rabbinic mitzvot?
Tomorrow.
Today, tomorrow. Yeah, these days it's only rabbinic. Maror and 4 cups of wine and also reclining. Very good.
So number 3, Pesach offering, we don't do anymore?
Correct. That's right.
Why did we stop making offerings?
That's a good question. Pretty much when the temple was destroyed, we didn't have the ability to. For many years now, a couple thousand years now, we haven't had the ability to offer sacrifices on the Temple Mount. You're only allowed to offer on the Temple Mount. We didn't have control until today. Pretty much we don't have control over the Temple Mount, so we can't bring offerings, animal sacrifices. Who knows? Maybe one day it'll change. We don't know the future.
And 2 follow-up questions.
Yeah, sure.
Number 5, it says 4 cups plus recline, or is it?
I made reclining number 6.
Okay,
So
recline is number 6?
yeah, recline is number 6. Yeah,
And the customs dipping is also part of 6?
that's another level. That's not. I didn't give that one a number. It's not a mitzvah of the Seder night.
And last question, what's maror again?
Maror, bitter herbs. We're going to talk about it. We're going to see it inside. Yeah, maror is the bitter herb. You have to eat some of this bitter herb. Most people use lettuce. Even though our lettuce is not so bitter, a lot of people put on salad dressing to make it sweeter, so maybe it is a little bit bitter if you just have it by itself. There's different types of lettuce. We'll get into it. But essentially, to make it a little more bitter, people use some horseradish or some other bitter herbs. We're going to see which ones are kosher, which ones are kosher for this mitzvah. Has to be something a little bit. Anyways, preparing for the Seder. Number 2. Boker Tov Pinchas and Boker Tov Yisrael. So nice to have you. We're on page 210. And welcome back to Ravid now that the group is getting bigger. Ravid's been missing for a week or so. 2 weeks almost. But we're back now. Page 210. Jordan, do you need a book or because we have more. Don't we have more? Yeah, behind you, Jordan. Gabriel, I was saying. Gabriel. Oh, it's okay. Make a mess. Sure. That's all right. Does anybody else need a book? Everybody have one? Just Gabriel. Maybe Hananel will show up too, so leave them on the table. You never. Okay. Number 2. Stephen, will you read it, please, for us?
Preparing for the Seder. As not that one of the 2 key objectives of the Seder is to transmit the tradition of the Exodus to our children, in order to keep younger children alert. We do many unusual things. At the Seder, we dip vegetable in liquid twice, wash our hands twice, and give the appearance of the beginning of the meal before suddenly starting to recite the Haggadah. In addition, the misfort of eating matzah, drinking 4 cups of wine, and declining also prompt the children to ask, why is this night different from all other nights? The sages also instruct one to give nuts and candy to small children at the beginning of the Seder, so they see yet another change and ask, why is this night different? It is good to give them small candy throughout the Seder, keeping them alert and happy. An effort is made to buy new clothes for the children and the entire household before Pesach, in order to make everybody happy. Indeed, the mitzvah to be joyful applies to each and of the 3 pilgrimage festival, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. It is therefore a mitzvah to buy clothes and jewelry for the women and girls, and give young children candy and nuts and some meat and wine to men at each festival. Sukkot Aruch 5-8, verse 2-3. However, we are even more careful about buying new clothes for Pesach, because wearing them for the Seder evoke a special sense of excitement for this exalted life.
Yeah, I remember, when I was growing up, we would get new clothes for Pesach. It was a nice time of the year. 2 times a year, really, we had refreshing of our wardrobe in honor of the Pesach festival and in honor of Rosh Hashanah, right? The other half of the year, beginning of Rosh Hashanah, which is then Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot, the festival season in the fall, and now for the festival season of the spring, it adds excitement and enjoyment for the Pesach Seder, for the Pesach holiday. Okay, continue page 230, 210 at the bottom. It is proper to set the table.
Proper to set the table and arrange the Seder plate before evening, so that Kiddush can be recited as soon as possible after the Ma'ariv prayer. In this way, there is no wasting of precious time when the children are still alert and can still participate in reciting the Haggadah, eating the matzah, drinking the wine. However, Kiddush should not be recited before Zet HaKovim, the appearance of the 3 distinct stars. Because Kiddush must be recited at the time when matzah can be eaten, that is, the night of the 15th of Nisan. Moreover, the Kiddush wine is the first of the 4 cups, and one must drink all 4 cups at night. This is in Shulchan Aruch 472, verse 1, and Mishnah Berurah and Log 4. When setting the table, one should put out comfortable chair so that participants will be able to recline. Ideally, the table should be set with the finest silverware and dishes. During the course of the year, we refrain from setting the table with overly attractive utensils in remembrance of the temple tradition. But on Shabbat and holiday, we do everything we can to enhance the table beauty. Shulchan Aruch 560, verse 2, and Mishnah Berurah and Log 5. On the Seder night, it is a mitzvah to beautify the table with the absolute best utensil, as is expressed freedom and joy. Shulchan Aruch 472 and Mishnah Berurah, Log 6.
Okay, so I hear two elements in what he's presenting. Number one is to prepare and make things beautiful, make things ready. And what's the second focus, which keeps coming back in preparing for this night?
Express freedom and joy.
Freedom and joy is good.
But
More specific. For who?
For the children.
That's it. We're always looking at the children. The children are the key figures on the Seder night. Because our mitzvah is to tell the story to who? To our next generation. To tell the children. It's class number 1 of the entire year. It's not necessarily in a classroom, but at the best classes maybe are in your very own home. So it's very much children focused, and get everything ready from ahead of time. Get the table ready with the finest dishes that you have, silverware. You get yourselves all dressed up with your finest, and you're ready as soon as possible to get started with the Seder, with this get started, so that the children are still awake, because children go to sleep earlier than most. Okay, so far so good? I'm getting excited just thinking about it, no?
Our question, Rob. How do we keep them awake? Because sometimes the Seder is so long.
Yeah, usually kids fall asleep at some stage. Makes sense. So there's a few tips. As a parent, candies is good. I mentioned before I give out chocolate chips so that the excitement is there without too much sugar. One little chocolate chip it's just
A small amount.
just a small amount. It just gets you interested, gives you asking questions, and also very very important is to take a nap
Before that.
before that. And I think I've said this before, but we all know that the festival of Pesach is for how many days?
7 days.
7 days. That's right. Like the festival of Sukkot is 7 days. Sukkot has an extra 1 day afterwards, but 7 and 7 makes sense. 7 days. But that technically should be called Chag HaMatzot. Because 7 days we're supposed to eat matzah and no chametz. However, the Torah prefaces and say that before the 15th, right, the festival of Pesach starts on the 15th. On the 14th, it's also a very special day. And that's the day might be called Chag HaPesach. That was the day that we actually brought the Paschal offering. So we'd have the shawarma to eat at night. We had to bring the offering in the temple on the 14th. So the day of the 14th is even more than like Erev Shabbat, the day before Shabbat you're preparing. That day itself is a festival. And we're going to see there's some ramifications of that legally. So there's a big focus on the eve of Pesach. Of course, in the morning you have to be burning your chametz, and there's all sorts of things to do. But then you're getting the table ready, you're getting all the things ready for the Seder. Don't forget to get everything done so that you can have a nap. And then your kids are able to stay up, and you are able to stay up later and to tell the story in the greatest elaboration possible. But of course, it depends on the age of the kids. You can't expect them to be up the whole time, and we'll see as we go ahead. Okay, what else do you have to prepare? One more question.
Yeah. Do we feed them before the Seder begin?
You could. That's a smart idea. Depends on their age again, of course. But small children for sure. Make sure that they're well fed. We're going to see that in the Seder too. There's snacks built in.
Okay.
Where are the snacks built in?
And
The matzah is not a snack. The matzah is the meal.
the Magid.
So the magid takes a long time, right? So, but we're not eating until after that. We're not eating the matzah till later. So what can we eat during the magid? What did we have beforehand? Kalpas, right? We went over this last week, the order of the Seder, the 15 sections of the Seder. And the karpas was a little bite to eat. So it's true that we did read about it, and we said it's best to have less than an olive size amount of vegetable. Karpas is another vegetable, not a bitter one, just any vegetable. You dip it in salt water. But there are other traditions where you should have a kazayit, and I tend to go in that direction because it enables everybody to not have their stomachs rumbling and be hungry, and therefore they're more at ease to recite the Seder, to recite the Magid, to tell the story, to talk about their Jewish identity, and to talk about the miracles that Hashem did for us, and everything that we want, all the messages we want to get at during the Haggadah. If you're if you have finger food, it's much easier. Some people hand out plates full of vegetables. Some people fruit. Just not matzah, of course. Not until you get to the mitzvah of eating matzah. At the end of towards the end of the Magid, we're going to see that technically, I think we mentioned it last time, that eating the matzah is part of the way we tell the story. We eat the story. We taste it. So the matzah, we save it for the end, but it's really part of the story. It's a great way to tell the story. So if at all possible, we have to introduce it. We have to talk about it first before we eat it. So while if people are hungry, they can have some more vegetable or fruit, whatever it is, or chocolate chips if you come over to my house. Yes, sir.
When I looked at the plate of the Seder, there's confliction. Because on one side we have something about the slavery, eating the matzot, and on the other side we celebrate our freedom. I'm talking about kapas, the vegetables. So, what's the lesson we need to learn about this, the confliction on the same plate, the freedom and the remembrance of the slavery?
Amazing, very astute observation. We mentioned it briefly when we started to talk about the 4 questions. I mentioned that 2 of them speak about the slavery, the customs that we ask about. 2 of the child asks about. 2 of them are customs which represent that we were slaves, and 2 of them are customs which represent that we're free men. And exactly that tension is what we're trying to give over to the children, that we were slaves, and Hashem took us out. We have to first remember the slavery, remember the bitterness of the difficulty of the Jewish people, and then celebrate the rebirth, if you will. And that's exactly the message that we're supposed to give. Let's read about the Seder plate that you asked about so beautifully, and what we put on it on page 211. Okay, Gabriel, we want to read for us, please?
Before the Seder, one must prepare the Seder plate, one on which all of the special Seder foods are arranged. Setting the Seder plate is not merely to keep the foods close by and at the ready, but also because each food commemorates and emphasizes a particular idea, and we must keep all the foods in front of us to express the uniqueness of the Seder. These foods are placed in the Seder plate. 3 matzot, with which we fulfill the Torah's commandments to eat matzah. We place them on the Seder plate so we can recite the Haggadah in the presence of matzah and maror, including the verse, "Tell your child on that day, it is because of this that God did for me when I left Egypt," which the sages interpret because of this means when matzah and maror are before you. Additional matzah is called lechem, 4 man's bread, which the sages interpret to mean bread over which we, onim, answer to say thanks. The matzah must therefore be uncovered while we recite the Haggadah. However, out of respect for the matzah, which is the most important thing on the table, and over which we recite the Hamotzi blessing, we do not recite Kiddush while the matzah is uncovered. Therefore, we cover the matzah during Kiddush, and when we lift our wine glasses, but otherwise they remain exposed while we receive the Haggadah. Some have a custom to separate the 3 matzot with cloth, based on the writings of Aritai, and others have a custom to separate the matzot. Maror is lettuce or horseradish. When the temple stood, there was Torah commandment of maror with the korban Pesach, but since the destruction of the temple, the mitzvah to maror is rabbinic.
Okay, so we have matzah and maror as the primary foods which have to be on the table. Essentially, our entire story is telling the story of the matzah and the maror. Matzah is the symbol of liberation, we're going to see, but it's also a little bit bread that we speak about. Lechem oni, some people say, means that lechem that we speak about. Oni can mean poverty, it can also mean speaking. Ve'anita ve'amarta is the verse which we quote from just a little bit later, which speaks about the verb la'anot, means to verbalize. So it's the bread of verbalization. Lechem oni is one interpretation. And therefore, we always have the bread on the table. It becomes a little bit of a sport. Uncover the matzah, cover the matzah, uncover the matzah, cover the matzah, lift up the cup of wine. In between, we're always switching between them because the primary part of the Seder should be said with the matzahs uncovered, because we're telling their story. But whenever we lift up the cup of wine, we have to respect the matzah by covering it. And that's why it's a little bit back and forth. But it's a fun sport. It's a fun sport. Okay? What else do we put on the Seder table, on the Seder plate? Go ahead, Gabriel. You're doing so beautifully. We're on page 212. in temple times.
In temple times, the meat of the Korban Pesach was also put on the same table, but with the temple destruction, the sages enacted that the two cooked foods be placed in the table, one to commemorate Paschal sacrifice and the other one to commemorate the Korban Hagigah, pilgrimage sacrifice, offered on every pilgrimage festival. Customarily, the Paschal sacrifice is commemorated with the
Zeroah. Zeroah is a Hebrew word, which means an arm or a leg.
Adulting to the fact that God redeemed us with an outstretched arm. Zeroah Netuyah. We roast the Zeroah. This is the Paschal sacrifice we roasted. Sephardic Jews customarily use the foreleg of a lamb or goat, whereas Ashkenazim use the wing of a fowl. The Korban Hagigah is customarily commemorated with a roasted or boiled egg. Eggs are customarily served to mourners as their round shape consolingly reminds them of life's
Cyclical
nature. At the Seder, the eggs primarily reminds us that the temple will be speedily rebuilt and we will again be able to offer the Paschal and Hagigah sacrifices. Additionally, the Aramaic word for egg, seniyah, can also refer to prayerful petition, alluding to our petitioning God to redeem us once again. The custom in most communities is not to eat the sirua on the Seder night. We also place carpets with either vinegar or salt on the Seder plate. Carpets is the vegetable that we eat before reciting the Agadah. It is dipped in vinegar or salt water both to make it tastier and to create the need for an additional hand washing, which causes the children to ask more questions. We place charoset on the Seder plate as well. Charoset alludes to the clay mortar our forefathers made when they were enslaved in Egypt. Before eating the maror, we dip in the charoset.
Okay, so what 5 foods do we have on the Seder plate? Other than the matzot, we have maror, 2 cooked dishes. Usually the zeroah is a roasted piece of meat or something like that, or chicken, and an egg, which is both of these cooked dishes are commemorative of the sacrifices. So what do we? So far we have the maror, the zeroah, and the beitzah. That's 3. Karpas and charoset, 5. Karpas and charoset. Karpas is a vegetable. Well, maror is also a vegetable, but there are 2 kinds of vegetables, 2 kinds of cooked foods, and the charoset. Charoset. What's your favorite recipe for charoset? Charoset is a mix. It looks like mortar. It's like a paste.
Apple, right?
Apples are usually put in wine. Nuts. Sorry?
Yeah.
Huh?
Raisins.
Raisins, is that what you mean? Wow. That sounds delicious. Could be, yeah. It sounds delicious. The problem is we're going to see later on that really there's no mitzvah to eat the charoset. We put it on the Seder plate to commemorate. We also dip into it, but we don't actually eat the charoset. Afterwards, people eat it just for fun because it's delicious, and it does. But there's no mitzvah to eat the charoset, as opposed. Well, there's no mitzvah to eat the egg, and most people say you shouldn't eat the zeroah. So this Seder plate is not only food that we're going to eat. It's primarily commemorative. It's primarily part of telling the story. And of course, the matzah we're going to use, the maror we're going to use, the karpas we're going to use, but not so. And we're going to use the charoset to dip in, but we're not going to eat it. We're not.
What about the salt water?
Salt water we're going to dip in also. Yeah. You put the karpas and the salt water together. Sometimes put it in on the Seder plate as well. Okay, we're going to skip over the next section. There's different ways to arrange it according to the Kabbalist approach, according to the more halachic approach. There's different opinions. They're all kosher. It's okay. Exactly how you place the items on the Seder plate is a long discussion. Kiddush, we're also going to skip. We know how to make Kiddush. We recite the text in our Haggadah Shel Pesach, and it has the Shachianu. We mentioned this already before. Let's go to the bottom of page 215, section 6. 215. 215. R-E-U. R-E-U. In Chinese. 215. Did I get it right? How are you? No. R-E-U. 215. In this book, 215 at the bottom. Okay? Eitan, take it away. The 4 cups.
The 4 cups. It says it's drinking 4 cups of wine on the Seder night, in order to increase the joy of redemption and give expression to our freedom. On every Yom Tov there is a mitzvah to rejoice by drinking wine. But for Pesach, the Savior's Spirit ingrazes 4 cups of wine into the Seder, so that our joy finds expressions in each of its passages. Kiddush is received over the first cup, and this everyone's cup is filled beyond the Kiddush. The story of the Exodus and the first part of Hallel are recited over the second cup, which is there fulfilled just before the telling of the story is begun. Birkat Hamazon is recited over the third cup. We refill our glass prior to its extinction and drink the wine right after. Finally, we pour the 4th cup. We recite the second part of Hallel and the Great Hallel over it, and then drink the cup. Thus every recitation at the Seder is over wine.
Okay, tell me, what do you think, guys? The number 4. Why did the sages institute 4 cups of wine? Why not 5? Why not 7? Why not 3? Why 4? What's the symbolism of the number 4 cups of wine? Yes, Michal, how are you?
Yes, in the book of Shemot, it's written that about 4 times about saving, redeeming, and the other 2 are the most. And I heard this cups correspond with this theme, and it's in one pasuk in Shemot. Like.
Excellent. In Shemot chapter 6, verse 6, begins Parashat Va'era, the second parasha in Shemot. And there, God introduces himself, once again, to the Jewish people, and he says, I am Havaya, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. I'm going to take you out of Egypt with the power of my great name. And there, the Torah uses what we speak about usually as 4 languages of redemption. 4 ways to say how he's going to take us out of Egypt. The 4 are Vehotseiti, I'll take you out. Vehitzalti, I will save you. Vega'alti, I will redeem you. Velakachti, and I will take you to be my holy nation. So the 4 cups of wine remind us of the 4 types of redemption that Hashem did for us in Egypt. Okay? That's a good answer. This is one. I have at home, it's all in Hebrew, so I'm not going to bring it in for you, but I have at home a page on which Rav Menachem Mendel Kasher, he collected not 1 reason for the 4 cups, and not 2 reasons for the 4 cups, not even 4 reasons that we have 4 cups and not 5 or 6 or 7. Guess how many?
Hunger.
Nope.
70.
The word kos
For
says kaf vav samech. So it starts off with kaf vav. Kaf vav is 26. 26 reasons why we have 4 cups and not 3. 26 reasons what the symbolism of the number 4 can be. What else at the Seder is 4? What did we just mention it before? What else do we have that's 4? 4 questions, exactly. There's 4 questions. There's 4 sons that we're going to learn about.
But
Very
also
good.
The four-letter name of Hashem.
There's a four-letter name
It's
of
also
Hashem.
26, right?
It's also 26,
There's
exactly.
a connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see that if you had to ask me what is the number of the night of the Seder, I would say 4. I would say it's 4. 4. We see so many 4s coming up. Anyways, our sages instituted 4 cups of wine. As we saw last time, first cup is the first part of the Seder. Second cup is with the Magid section. The third cup is with Barech, with the Birkat HaMazon. And the fourth cup is with the Hallel at the end. We have to integrate those 4 cups of wine, of course, to celebrate, to enjoy, but also to mark the great. Is this a biblical mitzvah? The 4 cups?
No.
It's a rabbinic mitzvah. You have to integrate it into your Seder. Rabbinically, 4 cups of wine. It's such a big mitzvah that the sages said, the beginning of Masechet Pesachim is, or the beginning of discussing the Seder in Masechet Pesachim. In the Talmud, the sages says, even if someone is so poor that he doesn't have any food, he has barely not enough to eat, the community has to take care of the poor every day. They have to take care of him, give him enough food to eat. For the night of the Seder, they have to give him enough money so that he can have 4 cups of wine. It's expensive. He can barely have enough food to eat. Of course he has to have food to eat. But he even has to have enough wine so that he can behave, even though he's poor, he can behave like he's a rich man and have 4 cups of wine. It's part of the mitzvah of the Seder. And so even if you're the poorest of the poor, we have to make sure to give him not only his basic needs, to support him so he should have food to eat, but also to enable him to rejoice and to celebrate. According to this rabbinic mitzvah, every Jew has to drink 4 cups of wine on the night of Pesach. Okay, questions? Okay, so the next paragraph actually says a few different reasons for the 4 cups. Eitan, you were reading. The sages explain, we're on page 216, the second last paragraph. The sages explain.
The sages explain the 4 cups is
alluding to, that's like giving a hint to.
Alluding to several things. The 4 expressions of redemption used in the Torah's account of Exodus. The 4 kingdoms that subjected Israel after it became a nation. Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And from which is the Almighty saved us. The 4 cups of calamity that God will serve to the wicked among the nations of the world, and the corresponding 4 cups of consolation that God will pour out to Israel.
Where does all these ideas come from? Why? What's why? Stand for? It stands for Yerushalmi Psachim. The Jerusalem Talmud, the Talmud from the land of Israel, has these 4 different interpretations for the 4 cups. As a rule, go ahead.
Number 4 represents completeness for everything in the world. That's 4 sides, corresponding to the 4 points of the compass. Jesus brought about a complete upheaval in the world. The Torah used 4 expressions of redemption in relation to it. Therefore said the Israelites, I am the Lord, I will rescue you from beneath the burden of Egypt. I will save you from the enslavement. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgment. And I will take you for myself as a people and be your God. Thus you will know that I am the Lord your God, who has taken you out from beneath the burden of Egypt. Shemot 6, verse 6.
6:6, remember? Shemot 6:6. So these are the 4. To rescue you, save you, redeem you, and take you. 4 languages of redemption. In Hebrew, Vehotzeiti, Vehitzalti, Vegalti, Velakachti. Go ahead.
Israel's bondage in Egypt was more than just the enslavement of those 600,000 Jews. It manifests the subjection of the spirit to the material, because the possibility of expressing spiritually will depend on the people of Israel, who were enslaved by the most materialistic of kingdoms, Egypt in order to free Israel, so that they could receive the Torah and illuminate and rectify the world. It was necessary to break all barriers and of opposition from each direction. The four expressions of the redemption correspond to this. In fact, a fifth expression of the redemption appears in the very next verse. I will bring you to the land that I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am the Lord. Since the verse does not address the Exodus itself, the sages did not institute a corresponding fifth cup. Nonetheless, it is a commentary to pour a fifth cup known as Eliyahu's cup, which allows the complete redemption that begins with entering into the promised land.
So it's interesting. We always talk about 4 languages of redemption. There's actually a 5th. You look inside the verses in Shemot 6. The story that God says, I'm going to redeem you, continues to a 5th stage. What's the 5th stage?
I will bring you.
Veheveti, I will bring you into the land of Israel. For thousands of years, on the night of Pesach, did we want to focus on the 5th language of redemption? We were sitting in exile. We were not in the land of Israel. We're not celebrating the end of history. We could only really focus on the 4 stages. Nowadays, many of the Jewish people, almost most of the Jewish people, are in the land of Israel. We live in an age of the ingathering of the exiles. Some rabbis suggest that we should be drinking 5 cups, not 4. Yeah, it's still quite radical. It's a minority of rabbis who do that, who suggest you do that. But everybody pours a 5th cup with the hope and the dream of redemption. We call that cup the cup of Eliyahu. Kos shel Eliyahu. We're going to see where it appears in the Haggadah a little bit later, towards the end of the Seder. We speak about the future. Some people say we're living in the future. We're here already. Maybe we should drink the 5th cup. But the traditional Haggadah, of course, is only 4 stages. We focus on God taking us out of Egypt, and not so much on the ultimate redemption, being brought into the land of Israel. We allude to it, we hope for the complete redemption. That represents perhaps the completion of the redemption, which we still are waiting for. Bezrat Hashem b'mehira b'yameinu. Amen.
Amen.
Questions? Comments? Yes, please, Benjamin.
The 4 cups is full cup.
4 full cups of wine, yes. We're going to skip over this section. There's a few pages here where he gets into the laws and the details. It's best to have wine. If you can't have wine, mix it with some grape juice. If you can't have any wine, to have only grape juice. Most poskim say that's kosher too. Best is, because you're supposed to actually drink at least half the cup, because that's a significant mitzvah of the night, to drink the cups. Try to find and get low alcohol content wine. Instead of 13, there's wines with 6.5%. There's even wines with 2%, and then you won't get drunk. What happens if you drink too much? You won't be able to do all the other mitzvot of the Seder night. You'll be on the couch falling asleep. And what about eating the matzah? What about telling the story? So you have to know yourself. If you can handle your liquor, have wine. If you can't, so mix it up. Have a little bit of grape juice. There's the size of the cup.
86, you see.
Gematria of kos. The full gematria of kos is the 26 plus the samach, which is 60. It's 86. They say that's really ideally you should have at least 86 milliliters. That's quite a small cup. Most kiddush cups today they sell are bigger than that. There are other shiurim. We're not going to get into those details right now, but you should have a nice cup of wine. And also, to control your alcohol content, don't use the biggest cup that you have, because then you're going to be trying to drink half of it. Have a smaller cup and then drink half of it. It's not too much. Sorry?
You have 1 year to prepare.
By training yourself to drink. Yeah, I understand. You have Purim to prepare. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it right that there is a custom that everyone put the shoes on the table because of this?
Never heard of that. No. Shoes on the table? My mother would say that's not nice.
No, you put your shoes on.
You wear them. You wear your. Well, yeah. We're gonna see. There's many customs. When we tell the story, we act it out. We said we taste it. We ask questions. We make it games. So some of it is like putting on a play. You like pretend you're leaving Egypt. Many times I would go out to kids. Okay, we're leaving Egypt now. We went out of the house, into the backyard. We walked around. We marched in a line as if we were leaving, and it was an exciting event. We do lots of things to keep the kids interested. Keep the children interested. We're just be telling them the story and making it come alive. Okay, good. What other questions? So far, so good? All good. Okay, the wine, we talked about it. Don't forget, when you drink the wine, Shalom, Boker Tov, Boker Tov. There's another chair. There's one here. There's one over there. Is there next? Oh, perfect. He found the solution. Perfect. There's a book in the middle. Welcome back. Eitan, give him a book. Okay. Chanina, welcome back. So the cup has to be big enough. We're not going to get into those details. What you do have to remember is, what do you have to remember when you drink the wine?
The languages?
No. What do you have to remember when you're drinking the wine? To make it a kosher fulfillment of the mitzvah of have the 4 cups. The mitzvah, you must have 4 cups. Plus
1/5.
Plus recline. You have to recline. We did it last week. Who can show me how to recline? Jordan's showing me. That's it. You turn if you don't have something to lean on, you put your chair. Why not? What does the sages say? If you recline to your right, on the right, and the trachea, the esophagus is on the left. So it could be dangerous to recline to the right. There's many, perhaps, other reasons, but you must recline to the left, even if you're a lefty. It's much harder reclining on your left to also drink with your left hand, but you manage, you do your best. And you must be reclining. Pillows, we set up with pillows or cushions, but you don't really need pillows or cushions. You just need to turn your chair sideways. And then or if you have an armrest, that's fine. But you have to be leaning. If you don't lean, the Hebrew word is for reclining is called, look on page 223, please. The mitzvah of reclining, the sages ordain one recline while eating matzah and drinking wine at the Seder, because in every Jewish ritual must give the appearance. Page 223, right? You must give the appearance of having just been freed from Egypt bondage. As said, he rescued us from there. The reclining is called Hasava. Lehasev, to recline. It was instituted so the sense of liberation would be apparent in one's behavior. You have to put on a show. You have to show that you're free by acting in this way, by changing your posture. And look at the bottom, page 223. The last paragraph says the requirement of hasava applies when eating. 7 times during the Seder, you must be careful to do hasava, to do that leaning. 7 times. 1, eating the kazait of matzah, you have to be reclining. Number 2, eating a kazait of korech, the sandwich we spoke about, we're going to talk about again. The kazait of afikoman, that's the piece of matzah we eat before the end of the meal. We'll talk about that as well. And then the 4 cups, drinking the 4 cups. So that's 7. 3 times we eat while reclining, and 4 times we drink while reclining. And if you don't spill any of those times, I'll give you a prize. Okay, it's very difficult. It is commendable to recline during the rest of the meal as well. But if one finds this uncomfortable, there's no obligation. You see, the issue is that nowadays we don't usually recline at all. Usually we sit on a chair at a table. And so it's a little bit strange. Some people say we really don't have to anymore because it's not the way we sit. Used to be they were sitting on a low cot, lying on their left. But we try to keep the mitzvah and lean on our left. We're going to skip ahead to the section on page 17. Skip all the way to number 17 on page 235. You know what? Even 237, section 18. The laws of reciting the Haggadah. Okay, section 18 on page 237. 237. Our son, what 7? Chi. Our son Chi. That's it. Michael Aryeh, read for us, please.
Our son Chi.
That's it.
Laws of reciting the Haggadah. One who merely contemplates.
Contemplates means think about. You sit there all night drinking your wine and you're thinking about the Exodus. Is that good enough?
No.
Not good enough. Go ahead.
One who merely contemplates the Haggadah does not fulfill the obligation to tell the Exodus story. As stated, tell your child in Shemot 13 verse 8. Express the story verbally. However, it's not necessary for all participants to recite the Haggadah. The main thing is that the Seder leader or someone else recites it aloud and the others hear it. Indeed, it was customary for the oldest participant to read and explain the Haggadah while everyone else listened. This is in fact the way stories are usually told. Nowadays, in order to include everyone in the recitation of the Haggadah, it is customary for the Seder leader to read it aloud while everyone else quietly reads along with him. Others have participants take turns reading paragraphs from the Haggadah. But it is important to know that only a reader who has reached halachic adulthood, is a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, can fulfill this obligation on another's behalf. When several sets of parents and children have the Seder together, it's not necessary for each father to tell the story to his child separately. It's sufficient for the Seder leader or another participant to read the Haggadah out loud, because as long as the father makes sure that his child hears the story of the Exodus, he has fulfilled the mitzvah to tell your child. One who wishes to enhance the mitzvah can further explain the Exodus to his child. In order to fulfill the mitzvah of telling the Exodus story, one must at the very least explain or hear an explanation of the Paschal sacrifice, matzah and maror. This makes clear that we were slaves in Egypt and that God redeemed us. Therefore, if parents see that their children are tired and are unable to complete the Haggadah, they must tell them about the Korban Pesach, matzah and maror and explain their meaning. The same principle applies to a participant who is unable to complete the Haggadah due to illness or military duty.
We are so lucky that we can spend as much time as we want at the Seder table. Sometimes a soldier used to go on to duty in half an hour. He's got to go the whole Haggadah in half an hour. How does he do that? He has to know what's the most important part, how to do it, and how. So now, with the remaining time, first I want to sing our song. Those of you who are not here, the other day, if you could turn on that little speaker for me, we wrote down the 15 stages.
I I've been playing
of the Haggadah. You've been playing it?
repeat all freaking.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I love that song.
It's great. It's nicely done. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's put it on now. Thank you so much,
Can I
sir.
record us singing it again?
We're gonna sing it. We're gonna sing it again.
No,
Right?
can I record us singing it?
Sure, you can record us. Yeah, whoever doesn't want to be recorded,
Everyone okay?
Yes.
speak your piece. Seder song. I sent you the link. Ready? Follow along. Okay? Okay, who's going to do it without looking next time? Know the whole thing off by heart. Kadesh Urchat Karpas Yachat Magid Rachza Moizim Latza Maror Koresh Shulchan Oerech Zafun Garech Havel Nimtza You have to listen more. You're mixing up the tune. That's all right. But the words you got, hopefully. Okay, so we went through briefly now. Preparing for the Seder, putting together the matzah, the Seder plate, getting all the table, you're wearing your finest, putting out your finest on the table, sleeping, taking a nap, and then you're ready for the Seder. You start off with, you make Kiddush. First you sing the song. Kadesh Ochat. It's in the Haggadah, you'll see it. And then you say the Kiddush. Finish the Kiddush, you sit down, and you drink the cup of wine. Don't forget to lean. Don't forget to lean. Don't forget to lean.
To the left.
To the left.
To the left. To the left.
Okay, that's it. Kadesh. And then we wash our hands or chats. We eat the karpas. We dip it in salt water. And then we break the middle matzah. And we start to tell the story, Magi. So far, so good? Okay, yes, question.
I believe the first Pesach, the lot such as ritual. When did the ritual start?
Don't understand the question? Try again.
就说第一次逾越节的时候肯定不是这样，那什么时候像这样开始这个逾越节的？
Now I really understood.
仪式啊，这个逾越节的仪式啊，是什么时候开始？现在的逾越节仪式。
The Chinese translator here. He
He's
says, yes.
asking when is the custom been brought into this? When is the custom is
Of what?
in?
Of what? Which custom?
Yeah.
With this?
Have called ritual. Have called custom.
Which?
When did the all ritual, the customs start?
All the customs? Each one has its own time.
All the customs about the Pesach Seder.
So yeah,
When?
they start at the night that we prepare the night before, and then you go to shul. You have Ma'ariv,
No.
and you come home for shul, and you start the Seder.
Oh.
Okay, it's the night for the night of the 15th, the beginning of Pesach.
When the period, the era, when the era.
When did Pesach happen? When does the Exodus from Egypt happen, or what are you asking about? What?
I think he's asking when is the whole Seder?
The whole thing on the first night.
No, yeah. When
do we start?
In the history, when does
Oh, where does it come from? I understand the history of this book that I gave you, right? It's a book in 4 pages. This Haggadah Shel Pesach. Where did it come from? Okay, good. Now that the question. Okay, the answer is many different stages throughout history. The earliest, of course, comes from the Torah. Tells you to tell the story, and then from the period of Chazal, they say you have to make kiddush, and you have to drink 4 cups of wine, right? And you have to recline. And so over time, it got more and more developed. The Nir Tzah section was added much later, where there's all these poems and songs, but the basic elements are biblical, telling the story. It's all just enhancement about how to tell the story. So it's based on the basic biblical mitzvot. The Torah says we have to do these things on the night of the Seder. So this night is Torah law that got more and more developed and more structured throughout various parts of history. When we go through all the how many sections are there? 200 sections. We could discuss. Each section was added in the 16th century. This was in the 12th century. This was in the 5th century, right? All the different sections, each one is a little bit different. But the sum total, it's all based on the biblical mitzvah to tell the story on the night of the 15th. While you're eating your Korban Pesach, and eating the matzah, and eating the maror. And the rabbis added it, you have to drink cups of wine. So but each particular section has its own history, which we're not going to get into. But there are good Haggadot which talk about it. And every section they say, this was added in this time period, and this was added in that time period. But they're all trying to accomplish these basic mitzvot. Telling the story, doing the mitzvot of the Seder night, the matzah, the maror, etc. Did I answer the question? Now we understood the question, we answered the question? You don't understand the answer?
Second, which year in history, which year begins
Well, as soon as we came out from Egypt, we got a mitzvah to commemorate that Exodus every year on this night. So it goes back to the Exodus. Jewish people were always...
But in the first Pesach,
yeah.
the ritual is not like...
Yeah, I don't think it was exactly the same. It developed over history.
They had no 5th cup in time of Moshe Rabbeinu.
I don't know if they had 4 cups.
But no
4
fifth.
cups were added by the sages. 1,000 years after Moshe Rabbeinu.
But it was not Eliyahu yet.
But it's been 2,000 years, yeah. There was no Eliyahu yet, right? Exactly. Very good. But the essence of the mitzvah, telling the story and eating the matzah and eating the maror, that's goes back to the first Exodus from Yetziat Mitzrayim.
But that's a difference, right, between the Pesach kept in Mitzrayim and the Pesach that
the details of the sacrifice were a little bit different. It's true.
But
the way they kept the festival, you're right.
Because also in the beginning they had to, I don't know if it's the halakha, no, I don't think so. But you read they have to wear a rod, a staff.
Yes, to carry your staff with you, right?
But it was not
That's
halakha.
not halach afterwards. That was only the first year, the first Pesach.
How it's called again? That
Pesach Mitzrayim, it's called the Passover of the Egypt when they were still in Egypt. The first night of the Seder, the first night of Pesach ever in history. Where were the Jews? In Egypt. They were inside their homes because what was going on outside? The plague of the firstborn. And only in the morning were they allowed to leave their houses and leave Egypt. So we commemorate that night, the night of the 15th of Nisan, ever since with remembering the Exodus. Okay. Now, which part should I erase? Maybe I'll erase the Seder plate. And my chocolate chips. There are a few rules about telling the story. Right, we're talking about the Magid now. The Magid. The sages say in the Mishnah that the story has to have two basic elements. Number one is you have to explain the three biggies: Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Maror, why do we eat Maror?
The bitterness of the
Well, that took about 10 seconds. That's good. Matzah, why do we eat matzah?
Because you have no time to leaven the bread. You have
That's
to
right. It's
leave.
a symbol that God took us out of Egypt and we didn't have time for the bread to rise, and that's a symbol of our redemption. And the Pesach, what does that mean?
It's the
The offering, what is that a symbol of?
Redemption.
That Hashem passed over. It says the redemption. We got out. Hashem told us He passed over the houses. He protected us in Egypt. Pesach means to pass over, or Passover. Comes from the word Pesach. Hashem saved us from Egypt. We explain these three. We've done the mitzvah of telling the story. In other words, you can't just, children, come over here, sit on my lap. I have a story to tell you. Do you know that one day we were slaves in Egypt? And we had to work very hard. And then Hashem took us out of Egypt and we were free. It's a good story. Why don't I tell it like that? We do, but we have to connect it to the mitzvot. Matzah, Pesach, and Maror. Right? You see that? We have to use the mitzvot of that night to tell the story. As a matter of fact, we're going to see in the Haggadah of Pesach when we do that. We point out each part of these mitzvot and we say to our children, we explain to them, we're eating matzah because, we're eating maror because, we used to eat Pesach because. And that's one element that you have to have it in the story. Second element, the Mishnah says, you have to start the story with I'll say lowliness, and you have to conclude with praise. Now this phrase, in Hebrew it's matchil bignut u'mesayim b'shevach. It says, you cannot just tell the story, we're free, Hashem saved us. Not good enough. You have to start with lowliness. You have to describe what slavery means, where we were as a people, the terrible state we were in, that we had no freedom, that we were in a foreign land. We were subjugated. We were made to work hard and tortured by the Egyptians. And only then can we say the second element. The second element is that Hashem took us out. Now that second element of praise can be interpreted in two ways. It could mean the good stuff, what happened to us, and could it mean that we're supposed to actually say or sing praises? So we do both, of course. We say what happened to us that we got out, and we sing. How do you sing praise?
Hallel.
Hallel, exactly. So remember, we have Hallel section over here. So we must sing the Hallel on Seder night. But also, believe it or not, in here, since it's part of telling the story, in the Magid, we have to also have a section of praise. So these are two elements. Now, I'm going to show you in the Magid where we we fulfill these conditions about how to tell the story. You can't just say, once upon a time. You have to make sure you're fulfilling these obligations. Number one and number two. Number one, if you open up your Haggadah Shel Pesach, does everybody have a copy?
No.
You don't have a copy? Well, you weren't here. Well, I'm going to have to print you out. I'll print you out one for you. I'll print out an extra copy. Who else needs a copy? Hananel, you don't have either? So I'll print out 2 more copies. In the meantime, look with your friend. Ravid, I just gave you one, right? You did. What about you? You left it at home? Okay, so look on with Yisrael. Yisrael, you have it? Where does the Magid start? When do we start telling the story?
18.
That's right, 18, exactly. Line 18. You can look with me if you like. 18. The Magid. We went through the first 2 sections. I want you to skip to the next page. Page number 2. Page number 3. All the way to where the Magid ends. Where does the Magid end?
108.
108, very good. Now, if you look at page 108, it's on page, what number page is it? Page 3. No, this is page 4, no? Page 4. Section 108, that's the end of the Magid section, and we get into Rachza, right? Magid, Rachza.
How we know this ends here? Oh, because how the Rav knows?
From the content. It's in the Haggadah, that's what it says.
Okay.
I just took the Haggadah and put it on a piece of paper, but it's in the book.
You read it.
Yeah, you see, it says Rachza. So, you know,
what means Rachza?
Rachza is washing the hands. That's when we wash the hands for the bread. So right before that, what do we have? Of course, we have the 105 cup of wine. That's the cup of wine, right? We said we have to have a cup of wine at the end of the Magid, right? And before that, what do we have? 101. The first half of Hallel. We have Hallel, right? Because we have to end up with Hallel. We say a little bit of the Hallel at the end of the story. Okay? What do we have before that? The section before 101. It starts on page 3. Look at the bottom of page 3. Number 93. Rabbi Gamliel.
3 things.
Story of the sages.
One of the sages. Eitan, read it for us. What does Rabbi Gamliel say? Page on section 94.
Ramban Gamliel was accused
94.
To say anyone who has not said these 3 things on Pesach has not fulfilled his obligation, and these are the Pesach sacrifice, matzah, and maror.
What? So Rabbi Gamliel says, number 1. He says, whoever doesn't say these 3 things has not filled his obligation. So what do we do here? We're going to fulfill the obligation. It's at the very end of the Magid section. We explicitly mentioned these 3 elements. Go ahead. Number 1, 95. The Pesach.
The Pesach sacrifice that our ancestors was
95.
yes,
Yeah, I'm just telling Binyamin. 95, go ahead.
that our ancestors were accused to eating when the temple existed for the sake of what was it? For the sake to commemorate the Holy One, blessed be passed over the homes of our ancestors and Egypt, as it states, and you shall say, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, for that he passed over the homes of the children of Israel in Egypt. When he smote the Egyptians and our home he saved, and the people both the head and bones.
Okay, Stephen, continue 96.
He held the matzah in his hand and showed it to the others there. This matzah that we are eating, for the sake of what is it, for the sake to commemorate that our ancestor, though was not yet able to rise before the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, reveal Himself to them and redeem them as it is. Because as it is stated in Exodus 12, verse 39, and they begged the dough which they brought out of Egypt into matzah cake, since it did not rise, because they were expelled from Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they made for themselves provisions. He hold the marrow.
Okay, Gabriel, read 98 and 99.
He holds the maror in his hands and shows it to the others there. Then this maror, bitter greens that we are eating for the sake of what it is it for the sake to commemorate that the Egyptians embittered the lives of our ancestors in Egypt, as it is stated in verse 1 to 14, and they made their lives bitter in hard service, in mortar and in brick, and in all matters of service in the field, in all their service wherein they made them serve with rigor.
Okay, Yefes. So you see, we fulfill in the last few sections, before we finish the Magi, before we drink the cup of wine, we do Hallel, we end up with Hallel, and we explain the three elements that are on the Seder plate, which I erased. The matzah is there, and the maror is there, and we don't actually have the shawarma. What do we have instead? What's it called in Hebrew?
Karpas.
No.
No. Zeroa.
Zeroa. We have some kind of roasted animal part. People use a throat of a chicken, the neck of a chicken. Some people use a piece of a thigh of a chicken. Whatever you want. It's just some piece of roasted meat. We don't eat it. It's to commemorate. We don't have a Pesach sacrifice. Be careful. Don't eat roasted food. Some people don't even eat roasted food during the meal because they might confuse it and say we have a Pesach sacrifice. We don't have that until the temple gets restored, until we get our act together. Till then, it's commemorative. But the matzah we eat and the maror we eat, the Pesach we just talk about. Okay? So we see we fulfill the Pesach story in one, using the condition number one. Condition number two, there's one other condition that I want to tell you about. So hold on to your question for a second. Okay? There's one other condition. Condition number 3. These are the conditions for the story, for the mitzvah of telling the story. Telling the story. 3 conditions. 1, you've got to explain the Pesach Matzah Maror. Number 2, you've got to start with the low parts, get to the high parts, and to praise Hashem. And the third part is, perhaps the most important, you're not giving a lesson in history. It's not about once upon a time. You're not only telling stories. You know what the third condition is? You must relive the story. You must relive the story. You must connect to it. You must identify. You must make it come alive for you today. And that's in section 100.
So you make a difference between reading and the way you are reading?
Correct.
With emotion?
It's an internal attitude. It's an attitude. Your attitude has to be one of connection, of making it live. Rabbi, can you read section 100 for us?
No.
No? Okay. Pinchas, read section 100 for us. In each
Israel,
100.
100. Each and every generation was obligated to see himself as if he left Egypt.
You got that? A person is obligated to see himself as if he left Egypt. You yourself. Person is obligated. That's condition number 3. You must relive it. A person is obligated, as it's stated, it says in the Torah, you shall explain to your son on that day, for the sake of this, did the Lord do this for me in my going out of Egypt? Not only our ancestors did the Holy One blessed be redeem, but rather also us. Together with them did he redeem, as it is stated, he took us out from there in order to bring us to give the land which he swore unto our forefathers. So, this is, we recite that as part of the Haggadah. We have to keep it in mind the whole time. The whole time that we're telling the story. Throughout the whole Magid. So we're not just telling a story of history. We're connecting. The mitzvah condition is to relive it. You have to connect to this tradition of the story that you're telling. The good parts, the bad parts. Sometimes if I have a guest at the Seder who lived more years than myself, maybe he was still alive during the Holocaust, or escaped from the Holocaust, or somebody who had an experience of what it was like to be in Galut, to suffer from anti-Semitism, I asked them to share their experiences. What's it like to feel not free? What's it like to feel in bondage, in slavery, not to be independent? Because we have to connect. We have to make it come alive. It's not just telling a story of history. It's our story, not his story. Right? It has to be my story, not his story. My story, not his story.
It's a mystery.
Ah, my story is like a mystery. I like it. So those are the 3 conditions to make to tell the story. So you can see in the last section before you drink the cup of wine, you get all the 3 elements, right? From we telling the first half of that. 101 is telling the Hallel. 100 is mentioning that you have to see yourself as being redeemed. And before that, the section of Rabbi and Gamliel was at the bottom, page 3, section 93. We have all 3 elements at the end. You know what? We're not done yet. That's only the last few paragraphs of the Magid. What about the previous 50 paragraphs? We have to keep learning. I think I told you the other day. We tell the story 4 times in the Magid section. The Magid section, we have to think about each time all the 3 conditions to make sure that it's a kosher version of the Pesach story, of the Haggadah. Each element is going to have some lowliness, some praise, discussing the matzah, the maror, and the Pesach, and it's going to try to make it come alive for us, for me today, not just his story. It's not an academic lecture about the history. You had a good question. When was each section added? It's a good question for the university. For somebody studying history. But we're not about to study history. We're studying my story. We're trying to understand how we connect to the story of the Jewish people. That's one of the conditions for it to be a kosher. You can know all of the history of the Haggadah. This section was from the Gaonic times. And this section was from the medieval times in Ashkenaz, and this one was added by the Sephardim in the Achronim times. You can know all of that and not fulfill your mitzvah, because it'll be his story and their story and their story. It's got to be my story. Okay? Yeah.
Yesterday I read in the name of Rav Abraham Tuchman. He talked about that the whole entire Torah is mean not to be read as a history, but if you, like you, because you are part of the story.
True, yeah, but especially on the night of the Seder.
Yeah, that's more.
Only on the night of the Seder do we have one of the biblical mitzvahs that you have to tell the story. It's one of the mitzvahs of the Seder night, specifically. So you have to do that in a way which you feel connected to. All right, so this is, we moved ahead, learning more about the Pesach, Haggadah Shel Pesach. I'll print up a few more copies for those who don't have it. And we skipped to the end of the Magid. So I showed you these three conditions are right there. Very clear, very basic. If you have to go to the hospital, if you're on a nurse or a doctor, you get called out, what's the bare minimum? You don't have time to do the whole thing. Maybe these last sections. Rabban Gamliel, section 93, all the way to the end, to drink the second cup, from section 93 until 100 and 108. Maybe those are the most important parts of the Seder. 93 to 108. The most important parts of the Magid. From 93
To 108?
to 108, yeah.
She begins the meal, right?
Then you start the meal. You have to wash your hands for the matzah. And of course you have to eat the matzah. But in terms of telling the story in the shortest version, well, not the shortest version, but the most clear version, which can show you the three parts, is right here. Yeah.
If you are alone, you live alone.
You have to say it all. You recite the entire Haggadah.
Like Kiddush.
Oh, okay.
This whole thing. You go from page 1 through to page 8, line by line.
It's not strange to do it alone.
It's many people live alone. If you don't have any family or friends, you should buy some.
Yes, you can buy easy.
And if you can't buy some, sometimes just 3 years ago, many people had Seder alone. Why? Corona time. People had to take the Haggadah. You go through it. Oh, now I say Kiddush. You go, you read the Kiddush. You drink the cup of wine. You lean. You go on to the next section. Kadesh, Urchat, Karpas, Yachat, Magid. You ask the 4 questions to yourself. And then you answer them. You go through all of the stages of the Haggadah, even if you're by yourself. It's more fun to do it with others. And it's better. Because the idea, part of the mitzvah, one of the mitzvot is to tell, you need to usually tell someone else. But if you don't have someone else, you tell yourself. That's the mitzvah of the night, to tell the story. So you recite this Haggadah. The Haggadah that we have has the story 4 times. I showed you one version, right? The last, perhaps the best version, because it includes 1, 2, and 3. It even mentions, one must tell my story, not his story. Okay, so all these 3 elements, yes?
I'm not for sure it was on Pesach, but last year we were invited and they eat like fish, but the head of the fish is still with Pesach?
Usually that's Rosh Hashanah you're thinking about.
Okay.
Rosh Hashanah, there's a custom to eat all sorts of foods which have a symbolism of a good start to the year. So the head of the fish is like the head of the year. Rosh Hashanah. And so that's, I think, probably Rosh Hashanah. But you can eat fish on on Pesach as well, but it's not necessarily part of the. There's no fish's head on the Seder
No,
plate.
he was saying, but I forget about it.
I see. Okay. Last question for today. All good?
Yes.
Getting ready? All right.
Well, I need to clean my home.
You need to clean. We'll go back to the laws of cleaning soon.
Maybe Rabbi will have Seder
Mishpacha?
Acharit.
Acheret. A different one. And it looks a little different, each family. But the basic Haggadah is the same. Just how you do it, you have your own style. It's fine.
We start 2 weeks school, right? 2 weeks.
10 days.
10 days.